Hello folks, I'm Rekatan and this is RekStarcraft, and this is a special video I'm doing to celebrate my first 100 subscribers. No, that's not too terribly many with guys out there with a couple 100,000, but it's a start, so I figured I'd go ahead and start celebrating early, and I'll probably do another one at 1,000. What I'm doing here is kind of answering a question I get a lot. Everyone kind of asks me, why do you do Massqueens and how is it actually working for you? So I figured I would go ahead and do an in-depth analysis on one of my replays. Actually, a very, very good game. I considered kind of submitting it to see if people wanted to cast it, but then I figured it'd be better to save it for this, give you guys kind of an in-depth look from my own perspective. So I will be spawning as the blue Zerg, and my opponent is the green Protoss, Horst. And this is a tryout he did for EVO. This was the third game out of a best of 5. So I won't really tell you too much else about the series, because otherwise it'll spoil it. So, let's go ahead and get this started. And for those who aren't familiar with my Massqueens, who haven't seen any of my games on Husky or anything, in a nutshell, it uses early queens to defend against the typical Protoss aggression. Just a second, let me put it on my perspective. Don't want us cheating at all. To fend off the early aggression, like a queen spine combo. And then from there it can transition into queen muta, queen corruptor, queen hydra, queen baneling drops, believe it or not. Usually like queen hydra and then baneling drops to deal with high templar. There's a wide variety of things it can do, but it's all centered around the queens as a tanking unit. And so it's kind of very different in that respect, and I found it's actually very, very superior to roaches as the tanking unit, in my opinion. Now, you know, I kind of have a wonky approach to the game, so a lot of people are going to disagree with that, but yeah, to those who like it, this is for them. Maybe they can give it a try. To those who don't like it, well, this video might be entertaining for you still. And if not, no problem. Excuse me. So, I'm opening with a very, very late pool first. 15 pool. And I found that this is very, very good for pool first builds. It's the only pool first build I use other than 11 over pool 18 hatchery. And these two drones are coming out because Horst is fairly good about the hatchery block, and sometimes I can prevent the pylon from going up. I don't even remember if I do. In this case, I do not. But nevertheless, I force him to drop that pylon a lot quicker than he would have preferred. And because I am pool first, I'm going to go ahead and be able to get that pylon out of the way very quickly. Now notice, should have production up. Immediately once that pylon went down, I went ahead and started an Overlord. The reason why I did this is because I'm going to be floating for a while, and I might as well go ahead and start my Overlord and get some resources spent, since I'm not going to be able to drop my hatchery right away. So make sure you're doing that whenever you get pylon blocked and they actually are going to let it complete, which most of the time they will. Sometimes they'll just refresh it, but in a case like this where you're pool first, they'll just go ahead and let it complete or cancel it. And either way, making that Overlord isn't going to really hurt you at all. So I'm opening up with some Zerglings. 6 is maybe too many, but on Steps of War, really no one's going to knock you for that. You kind of need a few more Zerglings or a few more of whatever you're going to be defending with on Steps of War, as opposed to other maps. So from this point on is where things get a little weird. Immediately I'm starting my second queen, and here I'm up to 25 supply with no gas. What? Yeah, no gas. And this is where this opening in particular, I've got about 5 or 6 queen openings, this opening in particular is a little goofy. It delays gas very, very heavily. And this is where I'm kind of taking advantage of those 6 Zerglings. I'm forcing a chrono boost on that sentry, which otherwise would have been used on a warp gate tech. So that already in and of itself is delaying his push slightly. And anything you can do to delay their push is going to really, really pay off, particularly on this close position. And this is actually part of why I picked this game, is because on Steps of War, a lot of Zergs have trouble, and this is an amazingly strong build on Steps of War. So what we have here is 3 spines going up, and this is in preparation for my hatchery to complete, which is about 80% now. And I'm spreading this creep over so that I have queen mobility. I'm starting my 3rd queen already, and I need that queen mobility so that when the push does arrive, I can pull the queens that are back here injecting my macro hatch and my main up to defend, and also just so that the spines can get up ASAP. So what this is doing is, by pre-building these, I'm actually gaining a little bit of time, and in reality I could have done this a little sooner and even had them up quicker, but no harm, no foul, because he didn't have any kind of 2-gate coming in. So this Overlord didn't really see much, and you know, I always feel obligated to suicide Overlord. That maybe was a case where it wasn't the best decision, but nevertheless, you know, it's a gamble, but it pays off 95% of the time, I would say. And even in this case, I at the very least know that he's hiding tech, and that's actually why I start my Evo chamber. He could be just hiding a few gateways because he doesn't want to sell the fact that he's doing 4-gate, but I don't want to take the risk that he's hiding a Stargate or a Dark Shrine, so I make the Evo chamber. And since I still don't have gas, I absolutely do need that. Now we see up on the production, he is in fact going hallucination, so he's going something a little more economical. You're typically not going to see hallucination combined with a 4-gate. I haven't been watching what else he produced, but if I recall, he does a, well, I suppose I shouldn't spoil. The extractor is going up finally, and notice it's at 44 supply. So if we check my income, this is where this build kind of pays off a bit. Notice this, 1,100 minerals coming in, pretty good at 7 minutes. And what that's providing me is a lot to saturate my my minerals and gas with. I'm going to be able to produce a lot more drones, and I'm going to be very defensible. Notice I have 5 spine crawlers up, and I have, on the unit station, okay, here's this push, I have 4 queens and 5 spines. So, that was even a bit of a hallucination push. He was hoping he was going to catch maybe 2 spines, and then he was going to catch me macroing. And the cool thing is I really was macroing pretty heavily. But because of those spines, I'm defensible against most of the, you know, kind of gateway-based play. And because of the queens, I'm defensible against any sort of air. So it's a very, very safe way to go. And now that I've seen he's attempted a push, and I've repelled it with no problems, I can afford to just drone up to max real heavily. And that's where this starts to really pay off, is it's not only very defensible, but now the macro's going to kick in real strong here. And you're going to see within the next couple minutes, I'll have capped out both my bases. Which, you know, any Zerg is going to tell you that if you can fully saturate 2 bases by 10 or 11 minutes, you are in great shape. So that's kind of the fun of this opener. And then from here, you've got some options. You don't have to stay Massqueen. You can go ahead and just transition into some typical play, or you can go ahead and stay Massqueen in the case that I did here, if you see that it's something that's viable. There's going to be circumstances where it's not viable, but generally you can probably make some sort of queen composition work if you really are determined to. It's just a question of whether you feel it would be the best choice. I'm breaking these rocks fairly aggressively because you need to take a quick third. When your Protoss opponent sees that you are so heavily turtled up, they're going to try and out-expand you because they've probably realized that you're developing a macro advantage. And as we see here, 1,500 minerals, 400 gas, I'm up 14 drones, now I'm up 20 drones, and still, at this point, I really don't have much of any risk of any sort of push getting through, just because so much transfuse energy is built up. I've got a couple more queens back behind. I need to set this rally point. Come on, set the rally point. There we go. And so, really, it's still very safe. And so your Protoss opponent's best choice is going to be to go ahead and try and out-expand you. And Horst actually keeps up with that very well. Now, notice I'm taking Missile Attack and Carapace 1. And this is very important. Double Evo Chamber is a must if you do plan on moving into Queens with the mid-game. If you don't double Evo Chamber, you're going to be upgraded. And Queens, since they attack twice, suffer greatly from a upgrade disadvantage because they lose 2 damage per opponent's upgrade of armor that you haven't matched. Vice versa, if your attack is higher than their armor, you're actually going to gain 2 damage per upgrade. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, and both ends of it kind of say, yeah, upgrade as much as possible. So at this point, I'm just kind of transitioning into Hydras, and what's going to happen here is the Queens are going to tank while the Hydras DPS. And this all started from me trying to say, how can I make Hydras viable? Because Hydras are so squishy, they're so, well, counterintuitive to what we remember Hydras being in StarCraft 1, that I just got determined to make them work. And this is where this kind of developed out of. So we see from my Overlord scouting, which in my opinion was a little late. I could have done well to get that scat in by maybe 10 or 11, but this is fine. We see he's going 2 Stargate, 1 Robo, and he's prepping for Colossus. So this is a very, very obvious transition into Void Colossus. He maybe never even intended to do anything more than force a few units with that starting push. So this is actually pretty good for what I'm going with. It's not going to be necessarily the easiest to beat because Colossus, once they have enough plus attack, do pretty well at killing Queens. They're still Queens are still tankier than Roaches, but they're also a lot slower. So that can make it difficult to chase a Colossus that's running away. And we see in my base... Oh, please tell me. No, I'm not starting Aspire yet. I should be starting Aspire. So that is actually a big whoops. Now, good thing is I'm immediately starting my level 2 upgrades. So make sure you do that. Make sure you're keeping up with that as aggressively as possible. And the income is still very much in my favor. I'm about 33% higher. So that is very nice. So make sure you are continuing to macro into your 3rd. And just, the spines are a little lighter here because I have a much better army. And he's actually, while I'm here talking, he's actually aggressively killing my creep tumors. And this is great on the part of Horst. He's trying to keep my mobility down. He's realized I'm Hydra and Queen. Both units are near useless off creep. And so by keeping my tumors under control, he's going to be able to go ahead and force some bad plays if I decide to attack, which is what happens here. This is not what you want to do with Queen Hydra. So don't learn from this engagement. See, what I'm doing here is I'm getting greedy. I felt obligated to attack his 3rd, and it's put me into a pincer that he didn't even really coordinate. I just moved into it. So notice the transfusing. This is really critical anytime you're going to go Massqueen. And actually, let's back just 1 second. Okay. Now this is not to show off. Okay, it's to show off a little bit. Wow, this is not going back as much as I thought it would. Okay. This is a little bit to show off, but mostly it's just to illustrate what Massqueen entails. This is something you will need to practice in Unit Tester. Keep an eye on my current APM. That's what we're watching. My average APM's low because I don't spam, but just watch my current APM. And this is going to illustrate just how difficult Massqueen can be to micro. And just keep an eye on the transfuses that go with it. Now we're up to 200, 300, 460, 500. So that's a mixture of focus firing and transfusing, but I would say generally if you're doing Massqueen correctly, you're going to be hovering between about 300 and 400 APM during your micro, and none of that is spam. Now, that may sound a little crazy, it may sound a little impossible, but it's not. Just go into a unit tester and just practice. Practice, practice, practice. Just T-click, 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 T-click. Do it as fast as you can. Don't even worry about targeting the right units for a while. Just practice getting off transfusions as fast as possible, and eventually you will get to the point that you can do that. So that engagement was really, really bad on my part. I lost a lot of creep here, which is actually very important because now I can take gold and there's not a lot I can do for a while. But more importantly, I gave away my unit advantage. I really seriously gave away my unit advantage. There was no reason I should have lost that, but because I was engaging cannons on one side and his army on the other side, I had a lot less potency. If we would have engaged in the center, just right around here, Whoa, why am I not pinging? Interesting. I don't think you can ping in replays? Huh. I should have known that. Well, you saw. If we were to engage in the mid, it would have been a very, very different look. I would have been able to get a bit of a concave going instead of attacking through this choke, and that would have been much more favorable. So when you're going Massqueen, make sure you choose... Make sure you choose your place of engagement very, very carefully, and that's going to allow you to maximize the spread on your queens, which is great against Colossus, and the surface area for your Hydras, or your concave for your Hydras. So this is good on Horse's part. He's clearing out more creep. He's making sure I have no opportunity to take the gold, and he's even kind of feigning a bit of aggression towards my third, which is just fine. I read it a bit. You know, I kind of understood that I needed to prepare for it, but more than likely he was just clearing creep. Just because he did take pretty significant losses in our first battle, despite that he did win. So I knew there wasn't a lot of chance for him to make a huge push yet, just because particularly Void Colossus is very slow to build, and that's something you can capitalize on when you're going against Void Colossus. Wow, I did not realize how long of a replay this is. This is kind of a marathon to cast, so I was kind of hoping to do some other examples of Massqueen, but if I'm going to cast this entire game, honestly, I'll probably be a bit worn out by the end of this. So, yeah, sorry if I start to get a little pooped. This is officially the longest game I will have cast. So, this doesn't seem like a lot is going on, and maybe not, it's not the most exciting game in the world at parts, but just keep an eye on what Horst is doing. Killing off creep like that is just so good, and wow, lag is so bad. And why am I not engaging more aggressively than I am? Honestly, it's because I perceived a threat that maybe was greater than I expected, but with my Spire finishing, I wanted to go ahead and give myself time to get the Corruptors up. Also, my Queens were all new, with the exception of a few, so you notice only about half of them have enough energy for more than one transfuse. You have to really keep an eye on your energy as a Massqueen player, because that actually is more significant than how many units you have. If you've got 20 Queens, and they all are at 50 energy, that's actually going to be a big deciding factor in whether you engage. So make sure you're watching that closely. Now I'm taking this gold, and this might seem super, super greedy, but actually it's to force him to engage outside of his comfort zone a bit. I like to do this in most any of my Protoss games, whether I'm going Mutiling or what. I like to take the gold to say, your move. Basically, you know, I know he's taking the gold as well, and so at this point it's kind of like, well, okay, you know that if I get the gold, I'm going to be able to outproduce you, simply because I'm Zerg, so it's on you to kill it. Believe it or not, that's the way it works. A lot of players feel like they're obligated to kill the gold, but that's not the case. If you're Zerg and you each have gold, it's on them. So my 3s are finishing, my Corruptors are coming out, and at this point it's just a matter of trying to force him to engage me. I've got enough Corruptors and Hydras and Queens here that this is actually a very, very good engagement for me, despite how many Voids and Colossi he has. So I'm pulling back my Hydras, trying to make sure as few of them are getting hit by Colossus as possible. And actually I kind of have bad positioning here, but he's forced to run back because of the Corruptors. And notice I'm switching my transfuse from my Queens to my Corruptors. They are now my primary target for transfuse. The Queens are relatively expendable at this point. I want to keep them alive, but if the Corruptors can stay alive long enough to get the Voids out of the way, then this is going to happen. Notice my Hydras and Queens, they've melted. That's the end of that. But what's important is all of my Corruptors are full health, and I have more than enough to take out the Colossi. You know, I lost probably half my Corruptors against the Voids, so that really isn't too bad, and now I have air superiority. So what this is going to impact is his ability to rebuild that composition. Because with 8 Corruptors on the field already, I'm actually going to be able to actively snipe them if I so choose. And when we do engage the next time, I'm going to have that many more Corruptors, that much more of an overwhelming air advantage. And this is where that Zerg advantage comes into play again. Immediately, I'm up to, and this is not factoring Queens, which are being worried about. Oh, look at this. That's bad. And actually, I think I do get them transferred over to gold here pretty soon, but right now I guess there's nowhere for them to be. There we go. There's nowhere for them to be at anyways, other than distance mining. So what am I doing right now? I'm upgrading my Greater Spire, and this is kind of your end game. against... Oh, I'm sorry, this internet... I have confirmed it is indeed the internet, it's not the computer. I've done some offline tests, and it is the internet. Also, when this lag occurs, for some reason my audio goes desynced, so if it seems a little delayed, I apologize. Just kind of understand that if I'm talking about something and it seems like it's not on screen yet, it probably will be in a few seconds. Okay, anyways. The Broodlords are kind of the end game when you're going Queen Hydra and when you've been forced into Corruptors. I got the Corruptors because I saw Colossus Void Ray, and whenever you see the Colossi, you're going to need the Corruptors. The Void Rays you can handle with Queen Hydra, but you absolutely need Corruptors anytime you see Colossi. And so since I've been forced into Corruptor, and since he's cannoned up his gold so heavily, there's really no other choice but then to go into just a few Broodlords. And you're going to see I'm not going to make too many Broodlords, because I am still up against Void Colossus. So my goal is to just get enough Broodlords to force another engagement, and that's really what Queen Hydra is all about. You want to force them to engage on your terms. You have that mobility disadvantage, so you're trying to put them in positions of attack me or else. And that's what I'm doing here. So we've got 6 Broodlords coming up. And that's all you need. In fact, I could have done with 4, but 6 is fine. 6 is just fine. And still producing more Corruptors. And let's see about army. 194 to 156. And this is beautiful. This is what Zerg does. And even with Queens, where I've got that slow production rate, because I'm on 4, now 5 hatcheries, I can actually rally out Queens very quickly. And that compounds with my Hydra and Corruptor production, because the Queens don't use larvae. So actually, Massqueen will reproduce an army faster, and lag more, will reproduce a army faster than a traditional Zerg build, because you're using up that Queen production as part of your unit composition, as opposed to using more larvae. So keep that in mind when considering this, because as a late game build, it really does have a strong advantage there. So here we go with one more engagement. And this is where it kind of starts to work out very well. I have the positioning advantage because he's forced to attack me out in the open. There's no more choke going on, as was the previous 2 engagements where I had to engage at the choke. And he really had no choice in the matter. If he lost that gold, the game was over. And so he really, the only other thing he could have done differently is maybe moved through here and attacked at this choke, but then he's walking right into Broodlord Fire, which not the greatest thing in the world. So that is about it for that. Pretty decisive win of that last engagement. I think I lost about 15 supply worth of units, just because by this point his DPS is just too low. Now, why is his DPS low? Well, let's go ahead and turn on preview, and this is something that was a big mistake on his part, but this is also why he was able to keep up with my massing so well, is he only has +1 attack. If he had upgraded, and actually his voids, okay, his voids do have some upgrades, but had he upgraded, his Colossi in particular to +3 attack, my Queens would have had a lot more trouble. So keep that in mind. The upgrade advantage is very much in your favor, but it may not look as clean as that last battle did if they have 3-3 to your 3-3. So that's part of why that was so decisive and why I lost 15 supply to his 100 supply. What else? There's not a lot else to talk about. This is kind of us just talking about the metagame, the Void Colossus, and I think we talk a bit about him wanting to join EVO, and that's about the extent of it. I know people are really picky about I forgot I said that. I was trying to console him because he went 3-0 against me, and then I realized in hindsight, like as I was saying it, I realized, man, that's a really arrogant thing to say. So yeah, sorry if that sounds kind of cocky on my part. But yeah, he went 0 for 3 against me, so I was kind of trying to console him because I felt he did really well. I used a lot of gimmicky stuff like this, and don't make any mistake about it. This is a gimmicky build. If people tell you it's gimmicky, they're absolutely right. But it works. And I guess, you know, a lot of people define something as gimmicky when it can't possibly work without the element of surprise. But honestly, I've used this build 5 games in a row versus some of my buddies, and they still can't beat it. So I suppose I should go through the contingencies that, since I'm not going to actually show those games since this was such a long cast, I'm going to go through some of those contingencies that I saw when I was practicing this build with some friends. the most common counter you're going to see is High Templar. This is an extremely smart counter by the Protoss player because you've got your Hydras, which are vulnerable to the Storm, and you've got your Queens, which are vulnerable to the feedback. And so if they catch you off guard with the High Templar, you're going to be pretty well boned. The Queens are going to be instantly dropped if they're full energy. They've only got 175 hit points and they have 200 energy. So one feedback can kill them at their full energy, or even at, what is that, 90% energy. And obviously, you all know how Hydralists do against Storm. How you deal with High Templar is Baneling drops. If you, I believe it was VOD number 5, maybe 6 of my live casts. If you give that a watch, you'll see this exact same build used against High Templar, and that is an example of what you want to do. You want to get Banelings in your Overlords, bait the High Templar into engaging you, just like I did here, force them into a attack me or else situation, and the High Templar are so immobile that you're going to be able to go ahead and pull off a pretty easy win, because they're going to be using a High Templar Zealot composition typically, because they've got so much extra minerals. What else? The optimal counter for any Protoss players watching, the optimal counter for this that I can tell is actually Void Ray High Templar. Very, very good, because Void Rays do bonus damage against the Overlords that will be dropping Banelings on the High Templar. And so, particularly if the Voids are already charged, it's very difficult to get the Banelings into range of the High Templar. And it's also very difficult to engage the Void Rays because you won't have your Queens available to keep your Corruptors alive. You're going to have to do some very, very careful range management. But I really haven't seen a lot of Void High Templar. In fact, the time someone tried it against me, I just pushed and won because they were so busy trying to save up gas and expand to get enough assimilators going that really they were just out of luck. It takes at least 3 base play to get that composition going, optimally 4 base play, just because it's so gas heavy. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but that is really the only composition I've seen that from Protoss that makes this kind of hard countered. Versus Zerg and versus Terran. Be very careful with this. I have seen some versus Zerg. I have seen some cool Queen Ultralisk, actually from a guy named Vicious. I just played him. And actually, if you go to gamereplays.org on the top replays, it should still be there. He did a cool composition there that was Ultra Queen, like 1 Ultra tanking, and then some Roaches, and then a bunch of Queens to keep that 1 Ultra alive. So that was kind of cool. But generally, I don't really recommend this in ZVZ just because Roaches now have the 4 range. And so they actually stomp the Queens pretty hard, just because you're going to be so busy getting in range and they can kite you, just because of the Queen's mobility disadvantage. Versus Terran, it's also semi-viable. I used to use it all the time against Terran. But siege tanks, particularly with even just 1 or 2 upgrades, still do pretty well against Queens. And Thors in particular are amazing against Queens. It's just each volley is 60 damage, and so 3 volleys is enough to kill a Queen. So you can imagine how hard that is to transfuse through. If they've got 10 Thors, you're losing 2 to 3 Queens per volley if you're not hitting those transfuses just perfectly. So be very careful using this in ZVZ or ZVT. It can be done, but you will need to transition out of it much earlier than CVP, where you can do it straight into the late game like I did here. So I guess that's about it. This has been a nice long-winded cast, so for anyone still watching who hasn't fallen asleep to my apparently relaxing and soothing voice, I had someone tell me that. So yeah, if you haven't fallen asleep yet, I thank you for watching, and I love you guys, and I'll see you next time. Oh yeah, that was a total Husky ripoff. Yep, I've been catching myself doing that because I watch way too much Husky. So yeah, I will see you guys next time.